welcome to the Movies Past and Present podcast. It's September 19th, 2019, and this is episode 33. I'm your host, Stanford Clark, and I'm podcasting from the crossroads of the West in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Just on my blog, moviespastandpresent.com, I'll be providing recommendations, commentary, and reviews about current and classic cinema. Thanks for tuning in, and let's get started. New in theaters this weekend, we've got three big releases. First up is the film adaptation of the hit television drama Downton Abbey. As you all know, Downton Abbey was a big hit. It was on PBS television here in the United States. And this film is the continuing story of the Crawley family, the wealthy owners of the large English estate in the English countryside, of which the series and now the film are named after. And it all takes place still in the early 20th century. This adaptation is directed by Michael Engler, and I think fans of the series will be happy to know that the screenplay is written by Julian Fellowes, who is the creator of the original series. It looks like everyone is back that was living at the time the series concluded its run in 2015. That includes Hugh Bonneville as Lord Grantham, Elizabeth McGovern as Lady Grantham, Maggie Smith as the Dowager Countess of Grantham, Jim Carter as Mr. Carson, Michelle Dockery as Lady Mary Crawley. The cast list goes on and on. I understand that this film covers a lot of ground with all of its major characters. So really, my hope is that just the fans of the show, and I've got many friends and family that really adore this show, are going to love this film adaptation, and they'll be able to just enjoy a trip back to Downton Abbey. This film is rated PG for thematic elements, some suggestive material, and language. Next up is Ad Astra, which is an outer space drama from 20th Century Fox. It's directed by James Gray, and it stars Brad Pitt and Tommy Lee Jones. The summary states that astronaut Roy McBride, who is played by Brad Pitt, undertakes a mission across an unforgiving solar system to uncover the truth about his missing father and his doomed expedition that now, 30 years later, threatens the universe. I've heard that this film is beautiful and should be seen on the biggest screen possible. I'm hoping to go see it in IMAX this weekend, and I'm also just hoping that the film is good. So Ad Astra is rated PG-13 for some violence and bloody images and for some brief, strong language. Last up is Rambo Last Blood, which is a super violent revenge pick, at least it sure appears to be, from Lionsgate Pictures. It's directed by Adrian Grunberg and, of course, stars Sylvester Stallone. If you can believe it, this is the fifth Rambo movie. The first one was First Blood in 1982. Most recent was just Rambo in 2008. Personally, I'm more partial to Rambo First Blood 2. That was the second film in the series from 1985. I remember thinking that was a pretty awesome action pick back in the day. And of course, again, this film stars Sylvester Stallone in the title role and a bunch of people that I've never heard of before. The official synopsis reads that almost 4 decades after he drew First Blood, Sylvester Stallone is back as one of the greatest action heroes of all time, John Rambo. Now, Rambo must confront his past and unearth his ruthless combat skills to exact revenge in a final mission. A deadly journey of vengeance, Rambo Last Blood marks the last chapter of the legendary series. In the preview, as you might have seen, it looks like some bad dudes kidnap Rambo's a young relative. Could be his niece, or I'm not sure if it's a blood relative or not. But anyway, Rambo gets mad. And then this whole thing just looks like a violent and vengeful and all the things that are part of these Rambo movies. And, we'll see if it's really Last Blood, because it just always seems like, along with the Rocky movies, that Sylvester Stallone is able to keep these characters going on in perpetuity. So, Rambo Last Blood is rated R for strong graphic violence, grisly images, drug use, and language. So, 3 new films to choose from this weekend in theaters: Downton Abbey, Ad Astra, and Rambo Last Blood. In Classic Cinema Corner this week, I want to talk about another big screen movie experience I had. Actually, it was just last night. I went and saw a 40th anniversary screening of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Now, this is a film from 1979, hence the 40th anniversary event. And they showed the original 1979 theatrical cut. I understand that there's been a director's edition that has come out for the home video market, over the last few years. But this also featured the film's original overture, which was really cool. I always love being able to, go see a movie on the big screen and they play an overture. It was pretty cool. It was before the overture. They also showed a little documentary, which talked about the making of the film and also just really the genesis of Star Trek as a whole. So, although this was the very first Star Trek film, as you may recall, Star Trek was also a TV series that ran from 1966 to 1969. Now, one of these writers that they were interviewing in this little mini documentary stated that they believe this was the first TV series that was turned into a feature film. Now, I don't know if that's true, but let's go with it, okay? If it's not the first, it's one of the first. And then it's interesting just to see really, with the success of this movie, how it launched again a whole bunch of movies, and then also I think it was definitely played a part in all of the successful TV series that have been going on and that continue to this day. So, as I mentioned, the last episode of the TV series aired in 1969. So 10 years later, they finally started, working on this film at Paramount Pictures. So I mean, I guess it was of course before 10 years, but it was released 10 years after. This production, according to this little documentary and some of the other stuff I've read, was really troubled. A lot of stuff going on. The series creator, Gene Roddenberry, was heavily involved, as were many writers and many studio executives. In fact, one of the writers they talked to, or one of the people they talked to in the interview, was saying there were countless studio executives, So I think that it sounded like this film was really in kind of a production hell sort of setup. But they were able to bring in the director Robert Wise, and which I think was a real coup. And it sounds like we can thank Robert Wise for really bringing this production together in the way that it came together. Robert Wise, as you know, is the director of West Side Story, The Sound of Music. He's got an incredible resume, and he's just an extremely talented director. At least I think, and I think many share that opinion too. So, the film also reunited the original cast from the TV series. So, William Shatner was back as James T. Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock, DeForest Kelley as Bones McCoy, Walter Koenig as Chekhov, Nichelle Nichols as Lieutenant Uhura, George Takei as Sulu, and then, of course, James Doohan as Scotty, the ship's engineer. Also along for the ride in this film were Persis Khambatta, who played Ilya, and Stephen Collins, who played Commander Decker. The plot of this movie, which we won't necessarily go into a lot, but just in case you haven't seen it, when an alien spacecraft of enormous power is spotted approaching Earth, James T. Kirk, he's now Admiral James T. Kirk, resumes command of the overhauled USS Enterprise in order to intercept it. Now, the film, in a lot of ways, given that it came out in 1979, even though it had been in development for a while, was really a response to the runaway success of Star Wars, which was released in the summer of 1977. And they brought in a really impressive team of special effects folks and did the same thing that was done in Star Wars, where they created miniatures and models, and we're filming that because, again, this was really still early on in the days of digital effects. I mean, they just really didn't exist the way that we, of course, know them today. There's an interview with the special effects wizard Douglas Trumbull. I'll put a link to this in the podcast notes. But he did the special effects, or supervised the special effects for this film. And there's this interview on the website. Ask him about it. One of the things that he stated was that the movie really is an attempt to elevate the genre from being seen strictly as an episodic television series to instead being a big, epic sci-fi film spectacle. And he's quoted as saying, "I think that was achieved, and that's what I was trying to help do. That's what Bob Wise was trying to do, and that's what the studio was trying to do." And according to him, mission accomplished. And he states that the movie looks better and better to me every time I see it. Now, I have to say, too, I really thought the film looked great for the most part as well. I hadn't seen it for many years, and I also remember seeing it as a kid, and I just remember being really bored. And I can remember, seeing it again, why I was bored, which I'll go to in a sec. But the film really, again, there's a lot of beauty in these old school special effects, and also just I was really wowed by many of them too. Just thinking, how did they do that? If they weren't using a lot of CGI, how did they create it? One of the things that I didn't really appreciate it as a kid, but I hope I can appreciate better now, is what Robert Wise did, and he used a lot of really long shots of going around the USS Enterprise, for example, also going through the kind of the enemy spaceship, or the mysterious spaceship that's hurling towards Earth. There's a lot of really long shots in there. At least they feel like they're long, but they're actually quite beautiful. And then with the soundtrack that was written by composer Jerry Goldsmith, it actually was part of, I think, the pleasure of the experience of this, the cinematic experience, particularly of seeing it on the big screen again. Jerry Goldsmith also has a really cool interview out on the main Star Trek website, and I'll put a link to it in the podcast notes. But as I mentioned, this production was troubled, and Jerry Goldsmith was quoted just saying, "I was miserable." I'll just go ahead and quote him. 4 months from the December 7th, 1979 release date of Star Trek the Motion Picture, he only had a limited amount of footage and had to begin recording in a month. It was hardly an ideal situation, and it would get worse before it got better. But then, as we all know, Goldsmith's score would go on to become an iconic part of Star Trek. The issues in the motion picture's production were far larger than the music. Paramount had given the film a budget of $46 million and locked in the release date while there were still story problems, not to mention visual effects difficulties. Subsequently, the post-production process was manic, and Goldsmith was writing music as fast as he could with what little he had. But when he put his music in front of the orchestra to record, director Robert Weiss was less than thrilled. Weiss said, "It's not working. I listened to the first couple of pieces and it didn't seem quite right to me. I got visions of sailing ships somehow." Goldsmith admitted that he basically just said, "I was crushed." Wise actually went into, as a good director, and I think as the good man that he was, went to explain to Goldsmith the problems that he had with the music, and the main thing he was saying that there was really no theme. Specifically, there was no quote unquote Star Trek theme, and so Goldsmith struggled on. But 10 days later, after this initial playing of the theme for Robert Weiss, Weiss approved it, and his comment was, "Why didn't you come up with that in the first place?" So, again, the music is just one of the great things about this film. It's, as I mentioned, I loved hearing that overture, and the opening credits. The music is fantastic, and throughout, it's just something that I really, really enjoyed. I was just really happy to see this film again with adult eyes. It just felt like it was a really beautiful and a really detailed episode of the TV show, which again was probably the intent. Although that also was causing a lot of the friction behind the scenes as they were scrambling to get this movie made. So I was also talking about those really long shots that Robert Wise employed, that I thought were really boring. I think maybe some of them still could have maybe a little bit too long. But to see it on the big screen and to look at all the detail of the models and a lot of the stuff that they were doing, it's just strangely beautiful. I just found myself almost quite mesmerized by it. Also, another thing I really loved was, given that this film came out in 1979, they created such great sets for this film. Just the hallways of the USS Enterprise and the bridge, things that we'd all be, of course, familiar from the TV show. But they were using a 1970s color palette, all this great burnt orange color, and these really cool grays and blues. I thought all the costumes, again, were very simplistic and very Star Trek-like, but they used a very different color palette and different kind of fabrics, and I thought they all looked just terrific. So, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, it's far from perfect. Again, it's some of the stuff could be considered either kind of boring or interesting because it's really not an action picture. There's some action, but it's really more of a think piece, or just kind of a ponderous long episode of Star Trek. But it's so fun to see the original cast reunited, and a lot of the shots I looked at and I thought, clearly that's something that Robert Wise probably put together, and they were really, really beautiful. And again, it turned it into a more of a sci-fi spectacle than just a TV series from the 60s. So if you haven't seen it lately, or if you have never seen it at all, I would definitely recommend, and particularly if you're a sci-fi fan, I would definitely recommend checking out Star Trek: The Motion Picture from 1979. And again, I'll have a link to the main site out on StarTrek.com. There are a lot of different versions of the film too. As I mentioned, there's a director's cut and whatnot, but I think everything's pretty easily accessible and available out on on Amazon or your favorite movie rental sites. Well, that does it for this episode of the Movies Past and Present podcast. Again, links and more information about all of the movies discussed in today's podcast can be found in the podcast notes on my blog at moviespastandpresent.com. As always, I hope you'll enjoy some good movies this week, whether they be from the past or the present. Until next time, thanks for listening, and see you at the movies.